Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Allegra Chapman is the co-founder of Watch This Space, a company which helps businesses to become more inclusive. She also has lots of ideas on how to make networking events more inclusive too. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today, Allegra.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're the co-creator of Watch This Space, which is something that we're going to talk about in a minute. But what's your background? What have you done in the past and what's led you to where you are now?
So I've had what I think is generally now termed a fairly squiggly career.
I like that.
I love that word. I think it's so brilliant, and it really sums me up. I've had quite a complicated background, I guess. So I started off in the charity sector, very much focused on communications and engagement. And then I had a bit of time in the publishing sector and technology around publishing. And then I moved into more of a sort of focused communications role. And yeah, I've done different things in different places, but the kind of heart of what I've been doing has always been around communications, a lot of work around engagement. And then most recently, before I set out on my own, I was leading a team at an agency, sort of advising on business strategy around engagement and marketing communications and things like that. So yeah, a bit of a a few detours along the path, but I think the heart of what I've done has always been kind of communicating with people.
Yeah, I like the term squiggly. I think I'm going to use that from now on for my own career, actually. Mine's definitely been squiggly.
It's good, too. Yeah, I had so many kind of hang-ups, I think, about the fact that I'd done lots of different things and did that look good. But actually, the older I've got, the more I've recognised how many different valuable experiences that's given me and how many different types of business I've learned about and how many different types of work I've learned about. And I can bring a much more sort of holistic insight now to the businesses that I work with because I've seen so many different sides of things. Yes. So actually, I think it's been really valuable.
Yeah, I think every different thing that you do, you learn something new, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I know that you're also a mindset coach as well, so tell me something about that.
Yeah, so I left sort of traditional employment when I had my first child and went through a bit of a crisis of identity with that because I'd never planned to be self-employed. That wasn't ever, a thing that I thought I would want to do.
No, me neither.
I was quite happy letting someone else take the risks and, do all the kind of building the business, and I would just do the work and, collect the paycheck and thank you very much. And, it's not an uncommon story, as happens to so many women. I had a baby and everything changed.
Yes.
And it was a real identity crisis for me because I defined myself so much by my career.
Yeah.
And I was a workaholic and I was very focused on my work. And that's where I got a lot of my sense of self-esteem and value and identity from. And then that was suddenly gone and I was trying to figure out, what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to carry on doing the same sort of things I'd been doing. The natural sort of progression was to go freelance, doing the sort of business strategy consulting that I'd been doing at an agency. But it wasn't really, my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I felt I'm not loving this anymore. And then I needed, obviously, to be able to work around having a 3-month-old baby, yes. Which is a challenge.
Yep.
So, yeah, I had this sort of whole kind of crisis of identity and what do I want to do with my life and what's my purpose and all of this kind of thing. Who am I now that I'm a mum as well as being, whatever kind of business person I am and all of these other things. And so I had coaching myself and it was revolutionary and I'd never really known anything about it, but it completely changed my life, changed my perspective on everything. And I just thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I love this. And so I went off and trained then as a coach myself and did my coaching certification because I thought I want to be able to do this for people. Yeah. So I've done some of that. Watch This Space has sort of taken over my life now. So I don't do much on the individual coaching, that I did originally. But it's great because I can bring that into what we do with Watch This Space now, and work with organisational leaders and helping them, with the way that they work with their teams, but also helping individuals to be more empowered in the workplace and understand themselves a bit better and identify what they want to get out of their career and their progression, and then bring those two things together, which is a really exciting thing to be able to do with people.
Yeah. So Watch This Space, how did it come about and what does it do?
Watch This Space is an organisational transformation consultancy. So we concentrate on helping businesses figure out what's not working and fixing it. But we fix it using the power of inclusion. Because diversity and inclusion and giving people a sense of belonging at work have so much incredible potential, and there is so much research out there that shows that inclusion increases innovation, it makes decision making better, it improves communication, collaboration, it improves engagement and motivation, it makes people more productive, and ultimately it improves the results that people get from their work, and it makes businesses more profitable. So there are very few issues in your business that inclusion can't support and can't help with. So we work with organisations to make that really work in a tangible way, because I think a lot of consultancies talk about inclusion and they do little bits here and there of consultancy or training or what have you. But unless you know what it is you want to address with it, and unless you know what your goals are, and unless you've got some measurement framework in place there to track your progress, you're not really going to know whether you're doing the right thing in the first place, whether that thing is working, and whether you're doing the thing that's actually really going to help your business and help the people within your business. So that's what we do, is really kind of do that analysis to understand where the gaps are, where the problems are, and what is actually going to really help move the dial for your business and make the difference, and then put a tangible action plan in place around that to make sure that it works.
Now I'm going to ask a really simple question, which maybe doesn't have a simple answer. So what do we mean by diversity and inclusion?
Oh gosh, well, Liz, we have a whole training session on this because actually, you're right, it is a really complex question. So the kind of the short answer, the sort of really simple answer at its root, if you think about any population is diverse. We have incredibly rich diversity within the human population and the human sphere of existence. We're a varied community of people. Diversity is not one person. I think a lot of people get sort of sidetracked thinking that if you have a person who has certain underrepresented characteristics, and that's your diversity. You can only have diversity within a group, within a population. And largely we have that already. The problem is that a lot of the people from the more underrepresented groups aren't being included.
Yeah.
And so that's where we come in to talk about inclusion, which is really at its heart about making space for that full range, that full breadth of experience, identity, background, everything, for people to be able to contribute and progress and collaborate and be heard and, reach their full potential within that community. Now, that is going to mean very different things to different people, to different organisations. Even when we're talking about diversity and people's backgrounds, that's, there's such huge breadth in that experience. And actually, funnily enough, there's been a lot of talk about terminology in the news this week. There's been, kind of conversations, but there's often conversations being had in the news about what terms should you use and how do you talk about different people. And there's never a right answer, because you're talking about terms that get to the heart of people's very identity, who they are, their essence. And no group of people are going to all agree on what that term should be, because we are a diverse group of people, and everyone's very different. They come at this from different backgrounds. So, you're never going to get a group of people who all agree on exactly how they want to be referred to and how they should be talked about. And, what inclusion then means to those people is going to be different, because it's going to be different. They see different issues, or they experience different problems, or they need different types of access or different types of support. And then what we tend to work on with organisations is understanding what kind of organisation they want to be at their heart, which comes down to what is your mission, what are your values, and what kind of environment do you want to create because then what inclusion means to you should tie into that and the kind of space you want to create. And it is going to vary. It is going to be different. There's never going to be one universal definition that works for everyone. But it's about creating that kind of environment that works for your organisation, for your team, for your stakeholders, and really, being able to define that and put some parameters around it, because then people coming into your organisation know what to expect and they know whether this is the place for them.
Yeah, yeah. Are there some really sort of simple steps that businesses can take to ensure that they're taking diversity and inclusion into account in everything that they're doing?
The first thing that I would always recommend to any organisation is to start collecting data and start really understanding what your current situation looks like. So, what does diversity look like in your organisation? How representative of your local community, your broader national community are you? What does that diversity look like across the organisation? Are all of your underrepresented groups all in junior roles? Do you have a spread across the organisation up to leadership or that sort of thing? What does opportunity and progression look like? What does your recruitment funnel look like? What do your team say about how included they feel and how well they feel different aspects of the organisation are working for them? All of these sorts of things, and there's a lot to think about, and it's quite a broad topic. We provide at Watch the Space an audit to help you kind of get to all of that, if that's something that you want. But you absolutely can do it yourself, but it's really just about sort of, spending some time really analysing and collecting that data and getting to grips with where you sit now, because that's really, you can't make any progress until you know what things look like at the moment.
Yeah. And so what kind of difference have you noticed in the businesses that you've worked with?
So different businesses come to us with different challenges and different things that they're struggling with. Recruitment is a really big thing right now. So a lot of businesses are really struggling to recruit and also to retain staff. So we've worked with quite a few organisations on getting inclusive recruitment processes in place and looking at their staff retention. We help with things like diverse talent programmes, which is helping develop different people from underrepresented groups throughout the organisation, so that there's more scope for them to progress, which is massively helpful for retention. And so those clients have seen a big increase in the number of people applying for jobs with them. They've seen better retention rates amongst their staff, and they're starting to see kind of, those sorts of differences. One of the really interesting things that I thought, one client came and sort of gave us some feedback recently, that they used to get constant questions from their team about what they were doing about diversity and inclusion, because the team were really keen to see more happening. And so all company meeting, it didn't matter what the meeting was about, it wouldn't necessarily be anything to do with diversity and inclusion, but some people would put hands up and ask, what are you doing about it? Why isn't there more being done? Why isn't something happening? And they then brought us in to do the audit with them. So we looked at all of their processes and their policies and everything they're doing at the moment, talked to their team, surveyed everybody, put an action plan together for them, which they're now working on. And they said they don't get any questions anymore. Nobody asks, what are we doing? Because they can see what's happening and they can see that progression and that development and stuff is happening. And it's not a quick fix, it's never going to be instant. There's things we can do, for example, on a recruitment campaign that will mean you'll probably, you'll get more applications than you would have done without those practices. We've worked with clients on marketing campaigns to help them reach a wider audience and connect with a more diverse and broader audience than they normally do. So you can see then an increase in the reach and an increase in the engagement. And there's small things like that will be kind of, relatively quick. But the broader kind of, sphere of your inclusion journey and how that progresses, it is going to take time, and it won't necessarily be, instant fix that you do this and then suddenly, your profits increase, massively. Those things are, it is a long-term journey, and it is long-term work, and it needs that long-term commitment and those kind of, incremental changes over time. But if you're tracking your progress around inclusion and you're tracking your progress around your broader business goals, you will see a correlation as things move forward. So that data, again, and that measurement is really key.
Yeah. So let's have a chat about networking now then. How inclusive and diverse do you find that networking events are that you go to?
Oh gosh. So I hate networking. I'll be honest with you. It's kind of my it's just my worst thing. I really dread it. I'm incredibly lucky that I've got a wonderful business partner. So my other co-creator, Mo Cangelel, she's an incredible networker and she's brilliant, and she goes to all the events and meets everyone, and she's wonderful. And it's really easy for me to kind of hide behind her and be like, well, Mo will do that. So I have to really push myself out of my comfort zone to do it, because I'm neurodivergent myself, and I'm a massive introvert. And if I could just hide away in my little home office and never speak to humans, that I'd be really happy. So, which I realise is not ideal when you're running a business. And it's good for me to get out and talk to people and meet people, but I do have to push myself. It is tough. And I know there's a lot of people like me. There's actually, I think it's something like 54% of the population are introverts. So more people are introverted than are not. And 15 to 20% of the population are neurodivergent. So there's a lot of people. I'm not the only one who finds it difficult. And I think it can be tricky. I think there's definitely a feeling for a lot of people that a lot of networking events that you go to, you see the same types of people, and that networking events might not be for certain people, and so, to be really honest, I think for most people, it's events are very white, they're often quite male dominated, and they're definitely not designed around the kind of neurodivergent people like me. So it can be, I think, a challenge, and I think it's really easy for people who are organising events to just sort of fall back on, oh, we're getting the numbers, and so we'll just kind of carry on doing what we're doing. But actually, when you bring those diverse groups together, and again, exactly the same as an organisation really benefits from having a really diverse group of people together, because it improves the decision making, and it improves the creativity, and it improves the kind of diversity of ideas and experiences and thoughts that you're getting within the organisation. It's the same in a networking event. You're going to get a wider offering of ideas and different perspectives and different connections that you wouldn't have got ordinarily. So it's really valuable if you can try and make events as accessible and inclusive as possible.
And what would make it easier for neurodivergent people, do you think, who are attending networking meetings? What would help?
So a couple of really, really simple things that you can do is, first of all, providing lots of information in advance. So telling people exactly where they need to go, what that's going to look like. If you can share photos of where things are and where people will have to go, that's really helpful. Neurodivergent people like me often spend a lot of time agonising about, exactly where is it, and how am I going to get there, and what's it going to look like, and how am I going to find my way, and all of that kind of thing, and getting really anxious about it. So things like that you can do to just make it, give people as much information in advance. This is how you deal with the parking, and this is how you will, get from where you've parked to where it is, or, all of those sorts of things. Really break it down as much information as you can possibly give. Tell people who they'll be meeting and who's going to be there. If you can share attendee lists and things in advance, so people have got an idea of who's going to be there. Having somebody on the door to meet people and introduce them to a few other people and kind of help smooth that transition into the event for them, rather than them just feeling they've got to walk into a room of people they don't know, is really great. Just having someone who'll have a little chat with you for 5 minutes, make you feel comfortable, introduce you to a couple of people, go, oh, hey, have you met Liz? Liz does this. Oh, and by the way, Liz also runs this amazing podcast, and, give you a few things that you can then get chatting about to them, so you feel a bit more comfortable. Then that's really helpful. Name badges are such a simple thing to do, but they're really, really helpful, especially if you're someone like me who really struggles to remember names and, has a real kind of fear around that. The one thing I'll say with name badges is I've gone to a lot of events where people just let people write their own name badge, and then people write it in really tiny letters. stick it somewhere that you can't read, or they give the printed ones that are in really small font. And like, if I've got to stare at someone's chest to figure out their name, that's not making things easier. That's making it much more awkward. So big fonts, please, big font, so you can see someone's name really clearly. Things like that are really, really great. If you can try and sort of introduce a little bit of structure to the events, that's really helpful. I think my worst fear is a room where I've just got to just walk in and talk to people with no kind of guidance or structure. So if there's a kind of little way that you can introduce, either a system that people have to talk to a certain number of people, or a kind of icebreaker questions for people to answer, or, structured little, discussions around a table or something, things like that help, people to kind of feel like it's easier for them to join in. And then some events, and I know that is kind of dependent on space and what you've got available, but a lot of events have started introducing quiet rooms or little kind of breakout areas that people can go and sit and just sort of, decompress for a minute if they're feeling kind of overloaded, on a sensory level. And that's really nice to have, just that little space where you can just go and breathe and reboot a little bit if you need to. And kind of structuring in, if it's a longer event, structuring in breaks and space for people to do that. So things like that can be really, really helpful. And then just being really aware of the fact that some people can get, this sort of sensory overload. So, trying to limit having loads of loud music or loads of bright lights, or, presentations with lots of kind of flashing lights and things going on, just trying to keep, pare all of that back a little bit so it's not kind of massively overwhelming for people. And finally, the last thing I would say is, if you are having a presentation and you are kind of inviting speakers or things like that, if people can have something to take away that summarises what the presentation was about or what went on, that's also really useful, because a lot of people, myself included, don't take information in orally very well. I'm much better reading, looking at things written down. But similarly, a lot of people are really, won't take it in if it's written down. They like it orally. So having a mix of different ways that people can absorb information is really useful.
Yeah, I think all of those things are relatively simple things to do, and while it makes the event inclusive, it doesn't make it very different to what people are used to, if you know what I mean. It's not, people aren't going to think, oh my goodness, this is an event that's meant for neurodiverse people. I'm not, it works for everybody, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And this is the thing with inclusive design of anything, an event, an organisation, a meeting, anything, inclusive approaches work for everybody. So actually, simple things like if you think about the fact that ramps up to buildings for wheelchair users are also really helpful for people pushing prams and things like that. There are so many layers to any kind of inclusive thing that you build in to anything, that it just works really well for everybody. And we talk about people who are neurodivergent who have that label, but actually, so 50% of people who are neurodivergent don't know that they're neurodivergent, for one thing. A lot of people like me, I didn't find out until I was in my late 30s that I was neurodivergent. So a lot of people are getting diagnosed later in life.
Yes, yeah.
And a lot of people just aren't getting diagnosed, they're just getting missed altogether. Yeah. But even the people who maybe don't fall into that category, which is a really difficult category to define, really. But everybody's brains work differently. Everybody has a different approach to how they absorb information, for example, or, you have things like whether someone's an extrovert or an introvert, or maybe a mix of the two, and, all of those sorts of different things that come into play. So actually, when you start to take into account different cognitive approaches, you are, benefiting absolutely everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's been a really fascinating conversation. Thank you for being my guest this morning. Just finally, Allegra, if people want to find you, find out more about you and watch this space, what is the best place for them to contact you?
So you can visit our website, which is watchthisSpace.uk. We also have a free tool that's available at the moment for people to have a little bit of a look at how inclusive their organisation is currently, which is watchthispace.scoreapp, SCOREAPP.com. But you can also find that through our website, watchthispace.uk, if you go on there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Allegra Chapman. I don't think there are too many of us about, so I should be relatively easy to track down. And also, if you're looking for Watch This Space on LinkedIn, we are Watch This SP-CE. So do come and join in. And you'll see, if you go to our LinkedIn at the moment, that we've recently launched a free membership community, because anyone who's working on diversity and inclusion in their organisation, or anyone who feels passionate about it, it can sometimes be a lonely space to be working in, and it can be hard work. So do check out our website or our LinkedIn to find out details of our membership community, because then you can connect to a group of other professionals who are all on this journey and are all working on it, and share learnings, share challenges, support one another, and get resources and support from us as well.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for all the valuable information that you've shared this morning.
Thanks so much, Liz. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.